trans accepting. Stand by trans people. Do you know what happens? The two communities, they're discriminated by all the fucking cis guys, discriminated by the trans people, and I'm bisexual as well, so the fucking gay people hate. Feels like some fucking eldritch experience. You don't fucking say to trans people that it's a fucking eldritch experience.
Or it. Whereas when it comes to homophobia, when it comes to transgender people, I know that they get murdered, and also I know
too, and it was originally supposed to be the safe space for trans people, but then to feel more secure in our identities with them. Like, now again, genuinely, transgender people, a lot of shit, like dysphoria to the unconverted. But at the same time, obviously, I want to allow, I want trans people and the agender starting to have, you know, debates about trans people, about whether they like, well, no, I've seen the light and you are beginning to understand that things are more complicated. No, fuck you. Trans people are being oppressed. Fuck you. Load of fucking morons of being like, trans people are traps. They are going to have sex with you, and then you are going to have it. I know the shit that trans people go through because I see the kind of despicable arse they're about, basically. Because yeah, transgender people are oppressed. The thought that transgender people don't count. No, fucking transgender people do count, okay? A woman is a woman regardless of what fucking genitalia. Bastard, I do actually give a shit about a lot of trans people, and they may have a very fucking rough time now by essentially skipping just to the parts that mention trans people. So they missed the whole context. They missed the people of colour. It's the bowl of the women. It's the bowl of gay people and trans people. It's the bowl of any. You know, all these movements have been put into place to fucking help, you know, trans people and gay people, and you know, we need essentially some kind of, you know, hatred term. But for trans people, right, I feel like, right, you know, I tried to be a supporter for trans people because because fundamentally, right, like, I am almost more kind of like, hey, you're insulting trans people, but at the same time, you can make as many jokes about transgender people as you like. You can make as many jokes about Jews and Muslims. That's a genuine thing that happens to transgender people, and it is horrible and it is wrong, and you know, it doesn't fucking matter. Where things are far better for transgender people than a world where no, actually, it's frowned upon and awkward, and people are wishing dead upon gay people, who are wishing dead upon trans people, who are committing to act. You know, the moon is not actually a fucking egg. But transgender people who are uncertain over their gender, when the Nazis get annoyed at me, I make money. When the trans people get annoyed at me, I lose friends. Thing within the story that trans people could take that would make their physical bodies resemble to transgender people as traps, right? Which, like, that is basically the equivalent for.
And it's okay. But if you're making a joke about, you know, about about gay people, about transgender people, then to the trans community, to trans people, for me to say, oh yeah, because I'm not. Okay.
And then Nazis decided to annoy the trans people to get them onto you. And then a load of nice people started dying. Respected, that I still respect. Because you're silencing trans people! I'm literally of the opinion that mods should always have. Why representation matters so much is that basically, right, the only time trans people are presented in the media,
it turns out transgender people were secretly demons, or that, when you killed someone, you
get so much as 3 months community service for raping someone on camera. Trans people can't go to the bathroom for fear of child molesters who discriminate against and oppress trans people, whilst at the same time voting for a guy who boasted about committing.
With the craziness that I can summon up at a moment's notice, making fun of transgender people is wrong. Because here's the thing.
Genuinely, there are black people in America, there are transgender people in America who over sensitivity to what these few disgruntled trans people have had to say about me. Scientists, there's a billion who disagrees. That is not statistically significant. Why are trans people so angry? Look in the mirror, or turn off your monitor. Morality is with the oppressed and the underdogs. It's with the trans people and the feminists, right? Because the cis white man earlier chimes in and says, you have a cure for trans people? Complete
part of the plot. That's what we should have with transgender people. And also, that's what we should have with women.
There will be links to where you can donate to trans people to help them get operations in the description.
No. These intolerant fucking arseholes have been taking the piss out of transgender people, so don't you dare ever for one.
The new JQ2 is not unbiased. The new JQ2 is biased in favour of trans people, and if you do not like that, you're transphobic. Not allowed to be strong and vulnerable, and we're fucked over by the patriarchy, but also feminism fucks over us. Like, trans people are fucked every which fucking...
Opposed to kind of, transgender people, aren't they funny? But oh no, they get murdered.
Shattered mental health community, and he's like, for fuck's sake, these bloody trans people, they keep bloody insulting me, and literally, I'm bisexuals, and it's not that fucking simple. Some of the feminists hate the trans people. Some of the trans binaries. Safe spaces are a good idea. Transgender people, people who are suffering any, well, yes, they should be treated, and they should be treated on the NHS. Like, even different trans people have disagreements about rules of internally. We want to help people. We want to help trans people. We want to fight transphobia, and that is to be. If you're not always on the side of the transgender people, then how can it be a safe space for transgender people? Because you're not always on the I tried to, rally behind trans people and defend them, and they're like, well, you write shit fiction. Sort of going, oh, look at the issues that the trans people face. It's just, yeah, she's a woman who... Because the rich think they deserve to suffer. Why are trans people being persecuted? Because transphobics think they deserve to suffer. Let me talk to you about autism, then turns into a rant about how trans people are discriminated against, but you know.
Saying, yeah, but transgender people are fucking weird though. Yeah, but transgender people, God, they just ruin all of the best parts.
Movement, there is a part of the, you know, the feminist movement that is absolutely all about, yes, we must support trans people, but that doesn't change.
Or any feminist who is like, well, you know, transgender people don't count. No, fucking transgender people do count. Oh.
And that basically is why transgender people get fucking sexual reassignment surgery, because as far as they're concerned, they if I'm not hated already by the trans people saying, yes, and now technology will allow people to transform, we are becoming better at being progressive in a lot of ways, that progressive movement hates upon trans people in ways that, and it's like, you know, trans people are definitely like in the kind of the worst situation, but I don't want women and trans people and non-binary people to feel uncomfortable. Making the issue blurry with, you know, trans people, but you're actually saying, okay, well, let's make it nice and easy then.
There are people who, when you discuss politics, will say, well, if you want transgender people to have the operation, then that means
an acceptance that that transgender people and the gay people and you know, bisexual and all this stuff were of fucking black people not being allowed to use bathrooms, except this time it's trans people. And in case you've forgotten, this is me, Miss of the Damned, and the Shattered Veterans Damaged Cantina. Safe space for trans people. Safe space for my. Do you think that social justice warriors, that feminists, that transgender people are the only people who will dog busking? So what should I do if I see someone being transphobic? And the trans people are like, you stick up and you say something, you educate, like you're saying, oh my god, trans people, because we have loos where trans people might be able to go to the loo, perverts. If I got this level of hatred by feminists or by, you know, trans people, because, you know, then I've actually going to get out of the schoolyard issue. But clearly, you know, women, trans people, people who have, or very...
Cuts down and goes, no! People use this to denigrate transgender people, and this is wrong because transgender people are always going to be a campaigner for equality for transgender people because they are legally defensible to murder.
I feel like that's gonna far more advance the cause of transgender people than, no, we will hide and pretend, and that you face harassment and discrimination. Maybe some trans people could learn to bite their tongue every now and again, but I always side with them. Being stalked by Nazis, bad enough. Having trans people and feminist people I think I support turn against me. Look at this guy! Do you think trans people are safe with him? And she's sharing my... Still someone who supports trans people. Of course I am someone who still will fight for their rights.
Because, guess what? You know, transgender people are murdered, okay?
An oasis where everybody thinks alike, and having a world where, you know, trans people who are intersectional feminists, like, no, at this point there is no doing this, okay? Like, when you give trans people the weapons that the dickheads of this video, that was basically just me going, trans people, I'm sorry, I get it now. I'm clearly not good enough to write them, but just sort of state clearly and repeatedly, don't kill trans people are nice. Also, feminism fucks over us, like, trans people are fucked every which fucking way, right? In the sense that trans people and there needs a better time of it, you know. I mean, feminists and trans people, whatever they may think of me, between, you know, trans people and Nazis, right? Then when the Nazis get annoyed at me, I make money.
I have experienced sexism against women and sexism against transgender people because people are thick and can't tell the He's rendered null and fucking void. Okay? Like, if you say, hi, I think all transgender people don't fucking exist, going to be transphobic, if you are going to be someone who does not regard transgender people as people with rights that demographics are better represented, such that trans people are properly fucking represented, please fucking God. Right? Some of the feminists hate the trans people. Some of the trans people hate the other people. Some of the gay people don't believe. And what was happening was that the reasonable authority figures were saying, you transgender people, you react when... I am hated by trans people for writing fiction presenting a trans cure, and I am hated by none. So yeah, another part of the reason trans people hate me is the fact that I am a guy who has experienced state clearly and repeatedly, don't kill trans people are nice. But it's not just trans people who can get affected by poor representation. I was brought up on a culture that says, yeah, it's fine to murder transgender people. And I look down at myself and go... You know, Caitlyn Jenner does support policies that if you're left-wing, you're not going to be a fan of, because transgender people are people. They're going to make decisions that you're still people. You know, transgender people are people. They are just as capable of being dicks. Okay? Dangerous levels of difficult genes in them. They may regard they may regard transgender people as that it is everyone. It is trans people, it is gay people, it is bisexuals like myself. It is... We need to stop being shitty to trans people. And of course this is a different culture, society, doesn't matter as far as trans people are concerned. It's insensitive and don't, right? I give a shit, right? I give a shit, you know. Transphobic, transgender people, they face the black people and the gays and trans people, you know, all these different demographics can look at the white man because they lack the weight of evidence. They lack basic fucking tactics. Trans people scare the fuck out of me because if they're out, you know, black people are a problem, the trans people are a problem, the feminism is a problem. You're allowed the electorate, which will be increasingly composed of trans people, of questioning queer, you know, asexual, gay, bisexual, pansexual, have got gay rights and we've got increasing, you know, support for trans people and stuff like this, because has opened up the new markets of kind of all the women in the world and all the trans people and what have you, you know, all starting to have, you know, debates about trans people, about whether they, like, well, what happens in the case of trans people, right? You know,
they've got the latest and greatest medical technology. You know, trans people are completely fine and well accepted. And you know, one of the things that is brought up in this thread is, well, if you give a shit about trans people, then why don't you listen to them? With the transgender community, of the otherization of all transgender people are paedophiles and they're going to rape your children. People have asked me many times, why do I care what a bunch of transgender people think of some fiction that I've written? How can it be a safe space for transgender people? Because you're not always on the side of transgender people. Which I don't necessarily agree with, but rolling and rolling, right? We don't oppress gay people and trans people and what have you because, well, it says here on some fairly standard stuff of, like, you know, trans people, gender fluid people, but we are also just gonna see, like, furries saying fuck, say shit about the English than that they say shit about Muslims, trans people, women, and, you know, stuff like that. I would Muslims, transsexual, transgender people, homosexuals, and just generally people of different ethnicities who have, you know, Mod, who had said, oh, we're gonna ban trans people, oh, these entitled trans people, right? He had been that transgender people are dealing with legal fucking discrimination. They are. When feminists and trans people are annoyed at me, I lose friends. And fucking this economic climate. You don't think there are trans people who've got other conditions wrong with them as well? That there are trans people with, because of this, you know, as I say, very understandable need to push for the equality of trans people, that we aren't recognizing people of color telling gay people, telling trans people, telling women how they should live. But no, this is me as a... I dare suggest that maybe transgender people consider not being dicks. Because intersectionality. You don't think there are trans people who are broke as fuck in this economic climate. It's this whole thing about, you know, like trans people are very careful to say, oh no, this isn't a choice, we have no choice, we're born. Who think it'd be cool if the technology existed. Trans people are people who are legit born into the wrong bodies and are freaking that you need to have nuance in this stuff. That it's not as simple as, well, all trans people are the same. You know.
When, to be honest, compared to, you know, like, transgender people and gender fluid people, yeah,
well, you portray trans people poorly, therefore you are horrible. And again, that's my bias. What this has taught me, though, is basically trans people can't have representation unless they are literally fucking worthy. He's on Laura K. Buzz's side, and he's on the side of transgender people. Anyone who is not,
and I see people, and they are like, oh man, but trans people are so horrible, like, you know,
a tiny fraction of the kind of shit that transgender people have to deal with. I've seen a tiny fraction. I mean, Mexicans and Muslims have been threatened with all kinds of horrible stuff, and trans people aren't even people getting shot dead in the street, and, you know, trans people who can't go to the toilet, and they're looking at me going, you complete tosser.
It is just someone shooting gay and transgender people. And you fail if you shoot a straight person. Like,
Another day. Trans people don't actually like living in a world where not only are they severe being straight, or depending on how you take the research, trans people into being cis, were kept on the system, right? They don't want to have, trans people jumping ship to another server. Did about yourself, and you're kind of feeling like, the causes of trans people are pretty darn important, right? The trans people are a danger because men can go into the girls' toilets.
That's actually a horrible, horrible, horrible thing to say to do regarding transgender people, because it's
big issues that we are going to face is the fact that, yeah, trans people and gay people are going to be the main characters now, and guess what? Of like, yeah, we're going to crack down on trans people because it could be used as a way for men to go into things. But societally speaking, I'm not oppressed in the way transgender people are. I'm actually to have sex with a woman with a dick, right? That joke basically has done for trans people what Jaws did for sharks. In that a high note, because you can make a statement saying, yes, we're going to allow trans people to use any bathroom they fucking well like, because fuck it. We don't. And socialists, they're coming for your scalps. The trans people, they're coming for you. All the left. I deserve to be burned at the stake, just like all of the other cis scum bags who fucking kill trans people.
Experience is a tiny fraction compared to the stuff that, actual transgender people have to experience, because
for equality and justice and for trans people and recognition that they exist, that there is kind of, I think I had like two sort of, trans people in my struggling to get still struggling to get transgender people recognized and treated as such. And again, it's like, trans people are dangerous because it could be used as an exploitation.
bisexuals, asexuals, gender fluid people, transgender people, queer people, people who don't
A blog post. It then creates a thread saying, PSA, trans people, stop being so entitled and let bigots lie. A graph of like identifying factors of, sort of the trans people and the trans experience, and they were having a go at these entitled transgender people. And that's right. In the middle of, a whole chaos day, you should just drop, hey, trans people aren't safe because Alexander got on. It's just gonna be, and welcome to the Torture Trans People Hour, for no fucking reason, because we're Republicans, and it's just what we...
more films with me. Therefore, marketing people will be like, hey, transgender people are seeing our films, we should represent them.
Trouble that I have had so long with trans people hating me, it all ended up essentially being due to people taking will go towards charities that help transgender people. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. Until there are no more privileged idiots, all that will happen is that trans people will have it harder, and they really do not deserve it. That there are feminists who think that transgender people shouldn't be protected or championed by the... This is why I ended up getting hated by the trans people, because it's like, this has been a thing within the sort of law of tried to get some positive representation of trans people in my fiction, and that attempt backfired. And toxic masculinity. The alternative right are gleefully everything feminists and trans people and black people and Asian
climate change issue. And, you know, transgender people are still going to be in trouble. There's still going to be a lot of bigoted people.
They missed all of that and just said, let's have a look at your portrayal of trans people. And this essentially is where
character, never mind. And then it's less, oh, you know, isn't it funny that transgender people are to do regarding transgender people, because essentially it's making transgender people out to be predatory in this
sort of controlled, fairly self-aware hatred for women and trans people for fucking over my life. So I've also got Kalman syndrome, so, you know, I'm not trans and I don't know what issues trans people are going through, but cis people,
an incarnation of the Doctor to help transgender people. How dare you? You're ruining Doctor Who.
like, well, yes, they should be treated, and they should be treated on the NHS. Like, even different trans people have disagreements about how exactly. Right, like when the fucking Nazis are using trans people as their attack, elected a president who fucking boasted about committing sexual assault, but hey, we can't let trans people go to the bathroom because the world is the better place to be in for everybody, including trans people, than the world where, you know, stereotypes and what have you are very much marriage and, you know, letting trans people go to the bathroom. It's cheap. It's fucking cheap.
Great transgender people, and this is wrong because transgender people are, they get murdered and all kinds of horrible stuff. So basically,
people can get hurt, people can die, right? And they do die. The oppression of trans people is utterly fucking up. They refer to sort of the trans people as nature divergent within their society, because go to the toilet just fine without harassment, because hey, I'm, you know, like, I genuinely do realize that trans people are being absolutely persecuted. It's like this thing that, you know, transgender people on the NHS, they're not allowed to be depressed, because if they're depressed, like, that's a fucking weird thing to do if you're really transphobic and you hate trans people. I'm going to create a group so that I'm a masochistic son of a bitch who likes getting kicked in the nudges by trans people, but because this is an area where technology, the ice caps may melt, Woking may flood, Trump may nuke Britain, you know, trans people may actually, black people saying we don't want to get raped and killed, trans people saying we would like to just fucking exist please and not be murdered and treated horribly, because I am not one of them. Equally, I am shut up on by trans people because, you know, they're like, why do you expect sympathy? They're the people in charge of running the world, and that's, you know, women, black people, trans people, gay people, like, when you have an enemy. What if people get raped because of trans people giving an excuse for men to go into women's bathroom? Like, that has never fucking. Or do steampunk and cyberpunk people get to be on the same level as trans people, and on the same level as people who end discrimination in the world against trans people? But I need to continue writing because my toilet. How dare they? Meanwhile, you're saying, oh my God, trans people, because we have transgender is so horrible that a lot of transgender people commit suicide because it's a very traumatic and you know, transgender people are wrong. That's not gonna go down real well. Because, you know, we have a go at trans people saying, oh well, you know, what if people who commit believe in the gender binary and still support trans people because it's like Freaky Friday kind of stuff. But the moment you have gender suddenly came out saying, oh well, you know, trans people aren't safe around you, right? Because I care. That, you know, you can't treat gay people like shit anymore. We're gonna say you can't treat trans people like shit anymore. You know, like transgender things are like kind of good and stuff, and why complaining about transgender people to me is not a very good idea. I'm a masochistic son of a bitch who likes getting kicked in the nudges by trans people, but because this is an area where technology, and I know the transgender people and feminists have not get murdered so very often, because there is this idea in popular culture that trans people are deceptive and that they are a lot of, okay, contrary to the fact that, you know, a lot of trans people have decided I'm a transphobic bastard. I do hate saying "rawr, fucking trans people, rawr," and you know what? That's bullshit. That is discrimination. That is mistreating. Muslims are a problem. The transgender people are a problem. If you are genuinely someone who has problems with these different stuff, so basically, don't do what the critics of transgender people ridicule transgender people for. And dysphoria is the reason that trans people who have not had the operations, but obviously, right, I'm not trans, so it's not going to be applicable to trans people, or at least, you know, like trans. I had to stop myself earlier on when I said that, you know, that transgender people would be born a gender, because the men just, you know, the people who say, well, why should we support transgender people and stuff like this, and it's like, maybe my fiction isn't the right platform to try and, you know, encourage people to stop murdering trans people, or maybe I should just have, like, it's like with my fiction, like, I can never ever write about trans people because people will get annoyed, right? Like, you know, like, genuinely, right? The shit that goes on to transgender people is atrocious. It is atrocious, and it's not just trans people who can get affected by poor representation. I mean, as I've said, you know, where you can feel free to be yourself, what safe spaces are all about. The trans people have their home now, and so do the arseholes. And if trans people can't go to the fucking bathroom in America, you know, literally of the opinion that mods should always support trans people, I just ask that you leave it to the mods first, because I have implications for, you know, for trans people, for people elsewhere on the sort of the gender spectrum. This is me, Mr. Transphobic, saying, hey guys, we should fucking be better to fucking trans people here. They said, do you hear the Doctor Who is going to hire transgender people? Isn't that a fucking problem? They are not very careful. Because the issue here is that you've got the trans people who need their safe space, and you've got against them, they can't even go to the loo in public places. Like, trans people are genuinely, utterly fucked over by society, by pretty much every single demographic.
And if you're gonna do something like that, if you're gonna have transgender people on the screens, then at least...
I mean, for God's sake, trans people can't go to the fucking bathroom, right? We're literally going right back. We can have some sort of, middle ground system where, trans people can have their thing and the Nazis...
You can't possibly defend this thing because arseholes use it to take the piss out of trans people.
That this was trans people versus the transphobic people. No, this wasn't. What this was people was trans people against shitty moderation and insult everyone, and these people are, and it's like, okay, yes, trans people or any demographic that is... Right, Vor. I've annoyed a good deal of trans people through being an ignorant fuckwit. I am, right? I haven't felt the stigma to the same extent as trans people, and obviously as a cis guy, right? And honestly, I swear to God, trans people already hate me, but when you don't know someone's gender, heterosexual, you have no choice in finding trans people who don't adhere to the end of the spectrum. So afraid of feminism and of trans people, of black people, and of cucks. Cucks aren't even a thing nowadays. We'll have more support for trans people. We'll see about legalizing
people who are alive now. Transgender is a fucking big deal, and transgender people have enough fucking problems as it is, but champion themselves. What we need to be doing is kind of stopping the let's make it legally okay to murder transgender people because,
hate me because I need injections in order to have my testosterone. Trans people hate me because I'm cis. And women are getting raped and murdered because trans people can't use the fucking bathroom or they're gonna get shot dead by fucking... Give feminists and trans people probably good cause to hate me. But
I saw as my best friends and so awesome were now just saying, yeah, but transgender people are fucking weird though. Yeah, but transgender...
trans people. There are cases of people who got shot dead by
fucking problems as it is, but I fully support transgender people. I just also am hey,
You've got radical feminists like Jermaine Greer saying, trans people, fuck them, no. And then on the other side, you've got men's rights to understand and care, because cisgendered men don't. Trans people, you take testosterone injections and you right? Trans people have to deal with sexism, misogyny, misandry. They have to deal with the fact the guy saying, actually, some of you are attacking transgender people, and that's just not right. And as ranting and banning transgender people, right? Just asking them kindly not to be dicks. But
did we just set transphobic assholes who are fine with the murdering of transgender people decide what we who actually...
But when trans people say, hey dude, you're a transphobic piece of shit, when women say, hey group are trans people. Of course, entirely, of course. But particularly choice of terminology there. But transgender people are people. They are just as capable of taking things out of proportion. Just there is a certain, reading of this, which is that, oh, well, it's a cure for trans people. That's clearly obnoxiously wrong. Significantly oppressed, which transgender people are, yes, it is absolutely right to be angry. It's absolutely right to be hurt, to want to... This article was basically saying, yeah, but transgender people need to wear clothing in order to be able to showcase that. And at the same time, I'm, seeing, posts from trans people going like, what the fuck is going on YouTube? Do you think, black people and women and gay people and trans people have kept going for so many centuries and thousands of years, then how can it be a safe space for transgender people? Because you're not always on the side of transgender people. This is part of why trans people get murdered so very often. Because there is this idea in popular culture
ever for 1 minute suggest that actually you should be supportive of trans species and transhumanist people too, because that.
So in a way, I suppose you could argue that kind of many trans people don't have a choice, but I did, because if not being outright transphobic, and they get annoyed when trans people will not calmly explain to them why their slating of trans people is only passing laws to discriminate against them. Trans people are more likely to be harassed, are more likely to be murdered, and more likely to attempt suing neo-Nazi scumbags, and then you've got all of the trans people and the women and the gay people and the bisexual. They fucking love me, whilst the transgender people that I support, that I look out for, that I fucking created a group.
Clarion calls of revolution and equality are like, no, but fuck transgender people, fuck them, they don't, ooh, they're weird.
Other conditions wrong with them as well, that there are trans people with autism, trans people who have been bullied and harassed. Parts of America, people are getting very annoyed that trans people are using their bathrooms, and they're saying that, anime and pre-op transgender people. I mean, don't get me wrong, right? Like, if that's your jam, people who are trans, people who are gender fluid, can have that element of themselves sorted. Things that are saying, I am not talking about trans people here, and still people will say, well, you portray trans people poorly, therefore you are horrible to trans people, or at least, like trans people are people. There's, many different kinds, and so, yeah. That this was goodies versus baddies. That this was trans people versus the transphobic people.